All right, welcome back to Track Talk. Very excited to bring you this video. This is the culmination of the 2025 Email 1830 tournament that we've been following for, I don't know, almost 6 months now. So this is the grand final game, and it's going to be played by O'Connor, alainesse, devouringtray, and TimPelican. Let's see what they get up to. O'Connor's up first. He's going to go on the M&H. alainesse the CNA, devouringtray D&H. TimPelican will round us out on the D&H. And if we're looking at this critically, is that a good move? I mean, devouringtray is the last of the other three players to bid again, least likely to be able to pull for face, whereas O'Connor and alainesse are both fairly incentivized to bid cheap here on the Schuylkill and Champlain and St. Lawrence and hopefully walk away with face value expensive privates. And then if you're TimPelican, from your perspective, you're stuck on the D&H and you got to fight it out with devouringtray to determine which one of you ends up with the B&O. So you're insuring basically an expensive D&H, and one of you is going to get screwed. Well, we'll see. O'Connor passes. Yeah, all right. He's happy to try and get a face M&H. If I were him, I'd probably buy the Schuylkill. I think that would basically guarantee that you get the M&H. Now, I mean, the counter argument to this is like, does O'Connor really want to give away a face value Canton and Amboy? And sure, that's super strong. Probably doesn't want to do that. But, with the things standing as they do, it's unlikely that he would get the PRR, although I guess as it stands, he would have the cash to float regardless of the PRR. So that would be a reason why he wouldn't pull. But, honestly, face value M&H, not that much worse than face value CNA. I mean, it's worse, but I don't know. All right, anyway. alainesse buys, and then does devouringtray bid up the CNA here? He does. Okay. TimPelican, M&H. So it works out. I just think it was a little bit risky. If I was TimPelican, I probably would have bid on the M&H instead of the D&H. All right. O'Connor, he passed last time, and now he just takes the Champlain and St. Lawrence. So I think that works out pretty well for him. He still gets a face value private, and still quite likely he'll get a decent price on the M&H. We'll see. We're on the D&H for now, getting bid up, and Tim takes it for 100. So devouring's going to be left to hopefully walk away with the Camden Amboy. Otherwise, he's stuck with the B&O, and it'll be between him and alainesse for the B&O. It looks like. So interesting. I guess alainesse really wants to make sure that he doesn't have to fall in the B&O. So devouringtray's in a good position to price enforce that. O'Connor's bidding on the M&H, and that will go to him for 135. Pretty reasonable price for him. I think he's in a good shape after this auction. Probably pretty happy with how things worked out. alainesse, we're seeing the CNA now going up to 210 and higher, 245. Pretty expensive, 250, and devouring does take it, but alainesse did a good job of bidding it up enough that even with priority, devouringtray won't be able to float unless he gets the PRR. So sorry, yeah, no, he will be able to float. All right, well, I guess that's good news for devouring. alainesse takes it, pars it at 90, so maybe seeing that float. Devouring is going to take the PRR. Okay, should be no trouble to float that. TimPelican, NYNH, and O'Connor CNO, pretty standard start of those three companies. The only unusual bit is the B&O also floating. I don't dislike it though. If you're going to give away the PRR float in stock round one, you may want to contest that Lancaster track and try and neuter the potential of the PRR. I think the CNA start is still really strong, but this would be at least one way to try and counter it. Everyone looks like they're just going to be floating their companies, so 4-company float. B&O is first up as we enter operating round one, and they do head straight to Lancaster, so I think that's what we were alluding to. They're going to try and beat the PRR to Lancaster and make the PRR worse of a company. I think the other thing that these players would probably have to consider doing is filling up the market of the PRR so that devouring can't just get a quick buy-in then sell out of the PRR to float for max value another company. The downside of that is that you're putting him far into yellow, if not brown or orange, by selling his shares, but still might be worthwhile. B&O, PRR is heading toward Lancaster as well and buys a 2. Did the B&O buy a train? I didn't look. It did. Okay. I've seen it before where a B&O player tries to get fancy. They lay track, but then don't buy a train because they're trying to keep their private open. I think that'd probably be a mistake. Um, and we did see him buy the train here. NYH is declaring for the B&M. Buys a 2, buys 3 twos. Okay. So it looks like the CNO is probably getting their privates then. And I think this was the M&H player. Yes. So that's a little bit questionable. CNO, easy buy-in. And we are into stock round 2. All right. So I guess that's one way to counter the CNA. Just make another player super powerful as well. A little bit surprised he didn't buy the Champlain at St. Lawrence. I don't really see a reason not to. And another $80 would put him all that much closer to parring a company or just trashing other people's shares if he wants. All right. alainesse passing. devouringtray sells one of his own PRRs, maybe hoping to disincentivize people trashing his shares. Going to buy an NYNH's instead. TimPelican, B&O. Expensive share with pretty little revenue, at least for the time being. O'Connor buying a B&O as well. Looks like he won't be floating, just buying expensive shares. He buys an NYNH. Does he know what that market share of the PRR? Maybe just buying that last, we'll see. He does take it. And we're in operating on 2.1. Let's just look at priority here. So Devouring will be second in priority right after the B&O player. Very likely that Devouring gets to pick his company by buying in the CNA and floating. So still a little bit of a tenuous position. I think this is just a rough game. I mean, there's a reason that the stereotype of 1830 is that you don't let the CNA player float, and he was allowed to in this game. So I think everybody's just struggling to deal with that. B&O lays Lancaster, but it is green already, so PRR was not blocked. This does hurt both companies because neither one of them will be able to get into Reading and Allentown until Brown now. Tokens it, runs 450, pays it, buys the 3. I wonder if they can buy into the 3s and rust the 4 and the rust the 2 and the PRR. Since nobody floated, I don't think that's going to be possible, especially because the B&O isn't pressing trains aggressively. But that would also be a way to try and put some screws to devouringtray. NYNH lays Providence and tokens it. All right, so he's done all of the dirty work for whoever floats the B&M. They really don't like this 3-2 train strategy. I've never been a fan of that. And I think in this game where you're definitely not going to be getting the B&M, probably giving it to the CNA player, it's even worse. Runs for just 110, pays it, buys the 3. CNO gets into Chicago, pays 70. He's fortunate that he doesn't have any parasite investors, so he's able to just pay this relatively high early revenue without splitting it. PRR gets into Lancaster, tokens it, and is going to run for 60. Buys the 3, and probably doesn't buy his private just yet because he can deny the Philly upgrade to the B&O player by sitting on it for another operating round. And of course, you'll also get the extra revenue. All right, operating around 2.2. Baltimore's upgraded, runs for 120, pays it, buys in Schuylkill. Not too exciting. NYNH, 4 trains, and can only run 3. So just really not great. Running for 160, and those 2 trains are not going to run again, I don't imagine. CNO lays the number 2, runs for 110. And let's just look at these two companies, the NYNH versus the CNO. NYNH has really disrupted the game by buying all these 2 trains, and the benefit for him is 160 in revenue, whereas the CNO is sitting pretty at 110 with just a single 2 train. So really got to question the strategy. I mean, some of this is inherent in the companies, right? Like the CNO just runs better than the NYNH early, but is the cost of buying all those 2 trains really worth it when you could have just sold an NYNH and bought a CNO and just sat pretty for a while? Anyway, buying the Champlain and St. Lawrence and not laying the Burlington tile just yet. PRR should probably buy his private and lay Philadelphia here. which is what we see. Very clean play so far from this player. And running his trains optimally. Going to run for 160. This is exactly what the NYNH ran for, and the PRR is able to do it much more efficiently. We're into stock round 3. Alainesse is up on the B&O. Not going to have cash to float. Would have to sell very heavily out of the B&O to do that. But honestly, I would like to see, I might draw some criticism for this, but I think it would be a heads-up play from Alainesse to just par the B&M at 67, and then let someone take it from you and sell those shares and invest in something else. That way, you're limiting the ability of someone like devouringtray to multiply their liquidity and revenue by max par in the B&M. I think that's really the most attractive float. You could argue that they could float the CPR, the Erie, and try and suitcase it. I think the NYC would be a risky float here when you don't control the NYNH. But I don't think we're going to see Alainesse do that, but I think that's something that could be considered. I mean, everybody in this table is kind of in a rough spot right now, so I think extreme play like that is reasonable to consider. He's going to buy an NYNH. Devouring is going to pretty much max par at the B&M as predicted, and he sells the NYNH that was just sold or just bought. TimPelican, interesting. So he would have had the cash for a max par if he had sold the NYNH first, but still elects to take the $90 par. But he sells the share anyways. That's interesting. Like either par at 90 and then don't sell the share, or sell the share and then par higher, I would assume. I'm not sure what the rationale here is. I think he watches these videos. Maybe he'll let us know. All right, Tim is up and will sell out of the NYNH quite high. If you're Alainesse, you're probably a little bit upset about this. Your liquidity is locked up because the market's full, and now you can see he's probably going to be withholding. So buying that share is a bummer. He max pars the NYC. Okay. O'Connor, he is going to sell out of the B&O and a bunch of other stuff and par something, presumably the Erie, and does max par. Okay. So now Devouring is behind all these other parred companies. Maybe he saw this company and maybe he saw this happening and parred behind them intentionally. Now, if they sell down shares, he can also sell shares and he'll be one spot behind them on the market regardless. Just assuming, with 3 companies floating, maybe we're going to be breaking into 5s in the next operating round. No guarantees, but certainly possible, especially with cash in the B&O still. All right, NYNH gets bought, so Alainesse is going to pressure that presidency, it seems. And interestingly, he buys it from the IPO instead of the market. There's only $1 difference. So he's preventing TimPelican dumping on him. Because if he had opened up a slot in the market, Tim could have dumped it on him, which from Alainesse's perspective, if you want this presidency, you'd rather have it dumped and sit on 20% than have to buy 30% to steal the presidency, especially if you have to sell your own B&O to do the purchase. All right, well, I don't really know what Alainesse's goal is here. If he's trying to run the NYNH or if he's just buying cheap paying shares, we'll have to see. And the odds of him ending up ahead of priority on TimPelican seems okay. So maybe he's saying, I'll just sit on 20% and steal it next stock round. Seems unlikely that will be allowed to occur. I assume that the NYNH, if it was split like this and Alainesse had priority, would be able to shuffle cash out of the company so it wasn't an attractive takeover. All right, well, we'll monitor that. devouringtray. Oh, Alainesse is going to sell. So maybe he is just going to take the NYNH straight up. Okay. devouringtray buys the B&M. TimPelican, NYC, O'Connor, Erie, Alainesse. He takes the presidency. All right. And that's bad news for TimPelican, right? He was really relying on the NYNH cooperating with him, and now he's lost that. Not a whole lot of short-term potential for the NYC. It's a good late-game company, but it's going to struggle here in the early and mid-game. May want to lay track horizontally here and then get into Providence. It's expensive, but at least you can guarantee yourself a run. All right, devouringtray B&M almost floated. TimPelican, NYC, Erie. Looks like everyone's pretty much auto buying here. Alainesse buys a CNO. Okay. So he's got a decent number of shares, but he's got a lot of train liability. Just barely has permanent train money on the B&O and is going to have to withhold quite a bit on this NYNH, I assume. Devouring Tray, TimPelican, and Erie. So far, nobody's trashed any of these newly floated companies. Devouring's going to get up to float. Tim is floated. And Erie is floated. Does anybody have anything else they want to do? Devouring goes back for a PRR. Tim, PRR. O'Connor is passing, and we are into operating 3.1. Let's look at the game state here. And I think we just see the power of the CNA here, right? Devouring Tray has the share lead. He was able to secure a pretty early company, so he's got good track potential on the PRR. He's been given good track potential on the B&M. I think that was probably a mistake on the N1H's part. But yeah, this early lead in shares is just really rough for the table to overcome. The M&H player is trailing by a share, but just because of the way operating order worked out, his second company is much worse than Devouring Tray's. All right, NYC is first up. Doesn't lay horizontal, is going to head down towards New York. Probably is not going to get any help from the NYNH, I wouldn't imagine. I think if I'm the NYNH, I either pass track or do something other than upgrade the New York track. All right. And actually, New York, NYNH doesn't have cash to upgrade New York. So yeah, there's definitely no help coming the NYC's way. He might have to lay a sharp turn here for a run, which is just strictly worse than running into Providence. All right. Buys the 3, rusts the 2s. So he says, you steal my company, I'm going to rush your trains, and that's fine. Erie, laying towards the east, buys a 4. B&M lays Boston, buys a 4. So we've got 1 4 between us and the permanents. B&O, not laying any track, and is going to run its 3 for 120, pays it. NYNH, not laying any track. Guess it didn't really have that much track it could lay since it doesn't have the cash for New York. Runs for 90, withholds. PRR. Is he going to run 2 trains out of this company? Is that why he wants double runs into Baltimore? Or maybe he just wants to prevent Baltimore from running into Pittsburgh. Not sure. Runs for 120, pays it. CNO heading towards Pittsburgh. Already tokened at Lancaster, so not the most consequential. Going to run for 80, pays it. B&O is up first. B&O, oh, sorry, B&O can already lay west. I was forgetting that it had the token in Lancaster, so this is not intended to prevent him from getting out there. I guess just giving the PRR options for runs into Baltimore. We see the token in Pittsburgh. With a payout, I think he'll still be pretty much safe for a permanent train if he wants it. So just securing his runs throughout the game. $12 shy of a 5 train, which is actually going to put him shy of it even with a private pay. So he may have to withhold for a 5 if he isn't careful as a result of this token. NYC, 2 trains, but really nowhere to go with them. If he had laid this way, he could lay this $120 track token Providence, which would potentially hurt the B&M a little bit, and then he would have much better runs. But as it stands, he's just running for 30. Pays it. Erie links up with Rochester, doesn't token it just yet, runs for 60, pays it. B&M has a 4 train and is going to token Providence, so too late from the NYC. Although if he had laid straight here, we may have seen the NYC or the B&M token in Providence last turn, so no guarantee that the NYC ever would have run through there. But he could still have run to Providence, which would have been a better revenue than New Haven. He could also have just run through Boston. That may have been helping the B&M player too much. Although if the B&M player So let's say NYC lays straight here, B&M tokens provenance, then it really doesn't help the B&M all that much to lay this $120 track. It's pretty minimal help. And then eventually Erie will get the token in Albany, you have to assume. Okay, well, anyway. Runs for 100, pays it, PRR, upgrades Pittsburgh, and interestingly upgrades it south. So doesn't want the CNO and Erie player to link up their companies, I guess, or wants to deny runs to the double O's to his competitors. Running for 120, pays it, CNO, probably hoping to block long-term access into Chicago with this track, since there's no straight upgrade that will bring him west now. And do we see a token in Pittsburgh? You do. I don't know that that token's all that useful. I think you could have accomplished something similar with a a sharp upgrade here, and then just leave Pittsburgh open. I don't know that Pittsburgh's that important right now. All right, anyways, 80 pays it. NYNH had to withhold last time, so has money for the New York upgrade. Doesn't really need to lay that though. Has a very similar run into Boston. Probably just wants to sit on cash as we approach permanence. So maybe don't lay track and just pay here. But he does upgrade New York. All right. It's $10 extra. Don't know that that's worth it. And he pays it. May come to regret that. Stock round 4. O'Connor's up. Just looking at cash here. Devouring Tray has the most liquidity, still has the most shares. And looking at his companies, he's got Permanent Train in the B&M. Not quite there with the PRR. May see some withholds on that company in the future. We'll have to see. Only company left to float is the CPR, and that has not been broken of its suitcase. O'Connor buys the B&O. Alainesse, B&O. Is that really the most attractive company? It's very expensive. It's running for 120. PRR is running for the same, a lot cheaper. All right. Devouring is going to buy a NYC. NYC, not the most attractive either, I don't think. Let's look at this map here. What's its potential? I guess an upgrade here will get into New York, which is a run for 90 once Albany upgrades. Still not able to run both of its trains, unfortunately. Okay. Tim buys the B&M. Is everybody just passing here? Alainesse buys a PRR. Devouring is going to pass. Really wants to keep priority. Fair enough. He's already ahead in shares. Doesn't have to really min-max his capital that much. And he does walk away with priority. All right. B&O looking to bypass the blockade set up by the CNO. Pretty low yield, I would say. And does have the market share still, so is able to get a 5-train money with just paying. NYC gets the New York upgrade, runs for 80, pays it. Erie heading towards the double O's. Those can't be accessed until Brown, of course, but setting up for it. Gonna run for just 60 again. Pays it. B&M, nothing doing. PRR, nothing doing. CNO, not entirely sure what the purpose of this is. I guess allowing him to run into Pittsburgh and then into the double O's long term. Okay. 80 pays it NYNH. Still doesn't have anybody really co-investing with him, so he owns 80% of this revenue. May just want to continue to pay and slowly rebuild his treasury. Running for the same 100 and is going to withhold. That brings us to 4.2. We're definitely in a little bit of a stall here. Let's see who this is benefiting. We're stalling on the poison 4. Unfortunately for the table, it looks like devouring Tray is kind of slowly pulling ahead here and was last operating round too. Even in the operating round, he floated his B&M. He still was ahead of almost everyone except for Alainesse. This is looking problematic. The NYC has no way to get a second run for its trains for another operating round. And is actually going to block the Erie. What's the purpose of that? Don't you want to cooperate with the Erie and get a second run for your trains? I don't know. Erie said, why are you not cooperating? I wanted to help. Runs for 60. B&O looking to get into Chicago still. Should be pretty easy to block from the C&O player. Pays for 120. B&M still running for 110. PRR doing nothing and running for 120. C&O actually looking to cooperate and bypass Cleveland. I guess if you don't have to run the DIT, you don't want to. But this is pretty helpful for the B&O player. Running for 80. NYNH 100 and paying it. So he's doing kind of half and half, pay, withhold, pay, withhold. I think if you got 5 shares in the market, it's okay to just continue to pay it out. I guess he's not falling that behind in cash compared to the other players. The exception being devouringtray, of course. He sat on $100, so he had a $100 lead from everybody else, but still, this is becoming concerning. Where's he going to put this cash? He pars the CPR. Okay, well, I guess that's one way to break a stall. And if we look at the operating order here, it doesn't look that favorable to him. Well, I guess I take that back. So he's got the B&M, then the CPR, and the PRR. So that's actually really good. If you have 3 companies in a row with a bunch of cash, you can push trains without worrying about anybody getting any of the trains you want. So if you're one of the other players, I think you got to look at this and try and manipulate operating order somewhere. Put one of your companies in the middle of his 3 companies. So he has to account for that. Because as it stands, B&M buys a 4, CPR buys 2 5s, and the PRR does not have cash for it, but he may have enough cash to kind of shuffle things around and get all the trains. All right, he doesn't have enough cash to float this. He will have to sell, but this NYC is pretty juicy, so could easily see a sale there, and that would put him just $100 away from the float. All right, we'll see what happens. Erie's getting bought, and there's a lot of cash sitting in this IPO to market arbitrage, so may see people just buying and selling these shares to harvest the 26 bucks. PRR gets bought, alainesse, Erie, devouringtray, NYC, yeah, so he's gonna just buy as many shares as he can get and then sell them all. And maybe he'll be able to get enough cash to actually float his B&M without selling anything else then. We'll see. So he just netted himself 50 bucks for free. Can do that again on the Erie potentially, and then he'll be able to float his CPR without having to sell any of the PRR or B&M. TimPelican buying the C&O. O'Connor, C&O, alainesse, Erie. Okay, is he going to sell out? He does. Still $12 there for devouringtray to harness if he wants, and actually 22 on his B&M. So maybe he wants to sell one of these before somebody else sells it for him. We'll see. It really depends. I think the priority here is not the pennies, nickels, and dimes. It's the operating order. So he needs to do his best to make sure that his 3 companies all run in order. We'll see if he's able to make that happen. devouringtray is going to buy the Erie and sells it. Okay. O'Connor, B&M, alainesse, B&M, sells it. So this is one of those times where that may have been ill-advised, because now you look at this operating order again. devouringtray buying a C&O. Is he not going to float the CPR? Maybe he just waits a operating round to float it. That's not safe to do, though. Right now it's a safe suitcase. And who has the Champlain and St. Lawrence? That is the C&O. So he really wants the 5s to come out before the Champlain and St. Lawrence operates. He's going to sell the C&O. Tim passing, O'Connor passing, alainesse buying the NYC. Is he going to trash that as well? Maybe. Devouring buys the CPR. He's going to be 20-something bucks short of floating it, but that's easy enough to fix. His PRR is ledge, so could easily sell a PRR without changing operating order. Everybody's passing. Alainesse buys an NYH, devouring tray, CPR, passing, CPR, and then we'll see what devouring sells. He sells the PRR, CPR, and I assume everybody else is passing. We're into the operating round, so this is very dangerous. We'll see what happens here. B&O heading towards Columbus, buys it, or pays it. NYC, probably regretting this right now because could have run 2 trains, but as it stands, just gonna do nothing. 90. Erie. He's probably trying to break the CPR suitcase, but it's going to be costly for him to do it. And I don't know that devouringtray cares if he does, because I think devouringtray is going to have a bunch of permanent trains. All right, Erie heading somewhere. 60. B&M should buy 4 here. Does. And does he? Yeah, he shuffles cash into the PRR. So the PRR now has 5 train money. So 2 5s in the CPR, 1 into the PRR. Very nicely done. 2 5s. And there's the last 5. He also gets the Philly upgrade. And B&O threw away his token in Pittsburgh. So long term, if he wants, he can token in Philly to make the B&O run through these dits. Buys the 5. O'Connor on the C&O. Not sure what he's doing. 110. Where's the 6 come from? Is anybody in a position to buy it? I guess the B&O with a hold is probably there. But if he were to do that, he would rust his own 3. The Erie, on the other hand, definitely can do it. And then he would have a 4 to fall back on. TimPelican's train lot. So we'll see. I think this game is just really kind of rough for everybody right now. You're not eager to rush your own trains, but devouringtray is already 3 shares ahead of everybody and has plenty of permanent trains, so he doesn't have to withhold ever again. If you don't push trains, does devouringtray just win this if it goes late? Probably. All right. NYH upgrades New York. Going to withhold, has just shy of 5 train money, but unfortunately 5 trains are no longer available, so still doesn't have permanent train money. B&O, so he buys 6 here. He's going to upgrade Lancaster, run for 140, and he withholds it, does buy the 6, okay. And let's look at operating order here. So his NYH is running after the C&O, also running after the NYC. I don't think he bankrupts. He's got enough liquidity for a D. Okay. Well, we may see pretty quick Ds here. TimPelican, still just running a single train. Does have a decent route now that he can run through New York. Did spend 40 bucks on the token. Okay. Why? He didn't have to token that. Is he worried about the CPR getting a token there? CPR have money? It does. Well, it doesn't have money for the token and track. So it didn't have to token there, at least at that time. I guess if you're going into a stock round, though, you have to worry about operating order. Realistically, no, he doesn't. There's basically no way the CPR is going to operate before the NYC. Okay, well, I don't think it's wrong to token it. Just didn't have to do it necessarily. Withholds, and there's the 6. Does this mean a D for the Erie? Could hold and get the upgrade, I believe. Well, we'll need $88 to do it, and this is only 60. This is only 70. And if he pays money to lay Hamilton, then he won't be in upgrade money either. So he is actually going to be short. Runs for 100, which is not going to be enough for him to get the upgrade. Okay. devouringtray, that's really good news for devouringtray. He gets to run his 4 again. I mean, he wouldn't have bankrupted. He has plenty of 5s. He's fine. But the added value of getting an extra run out of your B&M is pretty nice. Upgrades Boston. And that's a really nice 4 run. 180 pays it. Buys a train from the CPR. C&O now. I guess this is where the D train is coming out. Can shuffle, well, may want to shuffle cash into the Erie to get the upgrade, save himself $300. He also, in theory, should not bankrupt. He has the liquidity just barely for the upgrade, and then, well, does he? It's close. He's got a D train in liquidity, but he needs two of them. So he'd be $500 short, which is $200 short if he gets the upgrade. So if he shuffles and buys the right shares that run before him, he may be able to survive and get two D trains. He doesn't have D train runs, so I think he's out of the game, but um, he may not bankrupt. So he does shuffle, okay, and leaves exactly enough for the upgrade on the Erie. So I think the play is to try and get the Erie to run pretty late. Um, Definitely behind the B&M and the B&O, and then buy those shares and try and have them purchase your D train for you. I guess, well, it doesn't matter when the Erie runs. I guess it's really more about when the C&O runs, because that's where you're going to be buying your D train. So try and get the C&O to run late. Okay. CPR does get the link up, and I was wrong. He did have the money for the track and the token. For some reason, I thought he only had $100. Um, I'm not sure where the extra money came from. Maybe I was just mistaken. I see. The B&M put the money in there by buying the train across. So that's good. Um, yeah, he put an extra $20 into the CPR for that token. So I criticized Tim, but he saw this potential and tokened preemptively. So that was well played. I gotta um, walk that back. That token was appropriate. Albany gets tokened, doesn't hurt the NYC. Bad news for the NYH potentially. Runs for 170, PRR, lays Reading in Allentown, runs both of its trains for a monstrous 400. The NYH trainless and buys a 6, so he's going to shuffle. He should be pretty close to a D train in himself. He can just buy, I think, trains and companies, or buy shares in companies that operate ahead of his B&O. He only needs $134 of liquidity. All right, Tim is going to buy the B&M. O'Connor, a NYC. Alainesse passing. Devouring Tray just going to buy all the shares he desires. He's running away with this game. Unfortunately for him, there's not a whole lot of yellow shares, but there are 4 of them, so he's going to be able to exceed his start limit if he wants. CPR gets bought. That's an interesting decision. O'Connor. Alainesse is on auto pass. That's always concerning when you are playing this game. Is he just going to bankrupt? I think that's likely. He's just given up. Devouring Tray buys a PRR. Not concerned about these yellow shares at all. Tim out of cash, and presumably is going to be passing. O'Connor selling a B&O and buying a CPR. Is he just going to trash Devouring shares? Maybe, maybe not. Definitely at risk for a dump if he doesn't sell. Alainesse passing, Devouring Tray, NYH. And I guess he's just going to hoover up 4 yellow shares. This game's super over. O'Connor selling the Erie and buying the CPR again. So I assume he's going to max trash that and hope to win when Alainesse bankrupts. I don't think that's going to be enough. I mean, if you drop him 3 shares, that's what, $24 a share times 6. That's not going to be the difference of $500 between you and Devouring, especially because your Erie is not running and Devouring's B&M is going to run really well. Okay. And not going to actually sell those shares. Devouring NYH, O'Connor NYH, Alainesse NYH. So why pass this entire stock round and then just give Devouring Tray priority? Like what is the rationale there? Oh man, I'd be livid if I was in this game. All right. Anyway, our winner Devouring Tray has priority for some reason, and this is probably going to be the end of the game. B&M running for 280, pays it. B&O, is he going to sell shares and go bankrupt? Yep. Okay. Well, nice. Really well played from Devouring Tray. He got some help, I would say, in this game with the auction. Being able to float with the CNA like that, and then nobody was really manipulating operating order, so he was able to walk away with all three fives. Three fives, super strong, obviously. You get all the cheap permanents, you never have to withhold again. And more importantly, you deny them to your opponents. So now they have to figure out where to get their trains from and scramble, whereas you're just sitting pretty and paying. So really dominating performance from Devouring Tray. Really nice way to end the tournament. Clear victor. All right, thanks for watching. Track Talk will be back in the future.